Look at Luke chapter 1. We're going to continue and finish the subject of abortion. And what we did was we looked at what the Bible says about abortion. Is that not what's most important to us anyway? I mean, really, it doesn't make any difference to me what a politician says, and it doesn't make any difference to me what the world says. What makes a difference to me is what the Bible says, and that's all should make a difference to you. I usually, unless drug into it, won't debate it with someone that's trying to quarrel with me, because I have a tendency to get aggravated real fast over it anyway. But if someone don't have the same, if someone's standard's not the Bible, then how can you debate it? You see the difference? You have to have the same view and go with the same standard in order to debate it. A lot of folks say there's nothing in the Bible about abortion. That's where you'd be wrong. The Bible does say some things about abortion, and I'm going to take 5 minutes and repeat what I gave you last week. To me, the bottom line when it comes to abortion is what's in the womb. What is that in the womb? And the Bible clearly defines for you what is in the womb. And what we did last week is, I'm going to give this to you again real quick. In the book of Luke chapter 1, you'll notice in verse 41, it came to pass that when Elizabeth heard the salutation of Mary, of course Elizabeth was the mother of John the Baptist, or John the Immerser. Okay? And she was, whenever she was 6 months pregnant with John the Baptist, it says when Mary went to visit her cousin, and she was with child, it says the babe did what? The babe leaped whereat? So what was in the womb, the Bible calls what? A baby. And it doesn't, that the Greek word is the Greek word brephos. That same Greek word is used again in Luke chapter 2. And let me give you that one here. We give this all we got a whole tape on this subject from last week. Luke chapter 2, notice what verse 12 says. And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the what? Everybody see the word the babe? Same Greek word. That's the Greek word brephos. Same Greek word that was used to describe the 6-month pregnant babe that was in, or pregnant Elizabeth in Luke chapter 1. Here it says the babe and laid it where at? In the manger. So the Bible doesn't distinguish between the two other than where they're at. In other words, it calls that which is in the womb a babe, and it calls a newborn babe a babe. The only difference between the babe in the manger and the babe in the womb is their location. They're both still a baby. All God's people said. Will you stand with that? Will you stand with that? They both, by Bible term, are babies. That should settle it for you. So, if you would then take a sharp instrument and go to the manger and stab the baby in the back of the neck with that, would that be murder if you did that in the manger? If you then took a sharp instrument and cut them in pieces, would that be murder in the world? Or if you took a strong suction hose and sucked them up into a canister, would that be murder if you did that to the babe in the manger or the cradle? Would it or would it not be murder? Sure it would. Well, I'm telling you this morning, if it's murder in the cradle, then it's murder also in the womb. That's the way the Bible differentiates. It doesn't differentiate between the two. The only difference is the placement. One was in the womb, it was a baby. One was in the manger or the cradle, it's a baby. The Bible calls that which is in the womb a babe. It calls that which is in the womb a child also. You ever notice whenever a woman's pregnant in the Bible what it says? They're with what? They're with child. It doesn't say they're with fetal tissue. It says they're with a child. Okay? The word infants is also used. You remember it says they brought the infants to Jesus in Luke 18. Wouldn't you want to bring your baby to Jesus? They wanted Jesus, and I'm sure the Master hugged him and kissed him on the cheek. Wouldn't that have been awesome? And that word infants is used in Luke 18, same word brephos. That's used to describe that which is in the same exact word. So that which is in the womb is called a child, a babe, an infant. And when you turn to the book of Genesis chapter 25, whenever Rebekah became pregnant with who turned out to be Esau and Jacob, it says the children were like fighting with one another, so to speak, in the womb. A lot of movement in her womb. And God said that's because there's two nations there. And they've fought ever since. But I mean, it called that which was in the womb of what? Children. Now, folks, let's just settle it for God's people. They should totally sell it no matter what political label you wear, or whether you're labor or non-labor. That should settle it for you as a Christian, as far as I'm concerned. If you slay that which is in the womb, then you're slaying a babe, a child, an infant, or children. What they've done is they've called them fetuses, or they call them other names, and the reason why they do that is to dehumanize what they are. It's easy to kill something that's a fetus, or kill something that is a blob of tissue, but it's hard to call it a baby and to kill it. It makes it increasingly more difficult to do so. So let's start beginning today. If you haven't started, let's begin today to call what is in the womb what God's Word calls it. A babe, a child, children, or infants. But for crying out loud, don't call them fetuses anymore. All God's people say it. Call it what the book calls it. Why can't we do that? We can do that. And we have to choose to do that. Now, I'm going to move on. And the main thing that I'm going to do today is to cover the arguments against the pro-life position. I'm going to cover those. Before I do, I'm going to give you some statistics. Ever since I got that tooth pulled, I can't hardly say that. Statistics with regard to abortion. I must say they're alarming statistics, and they aggravate me. Still aggravated over them. And let me give them to you. And you can look these up. The problem with the numbers, I can still say that. The problem with the numbers is numbers do fluctuate just a little bit, but you can get an idea. It's one thing to tell people things are bad, but it's other thing to show them how bad it really is using numbers. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. 1 in 6 women that have an abortion in America, remember they fill out little cards whenever they have an abortion. 1 in 6 women that have abortion are called call themselves born-again Christians. 1 in 6 who have them call themselves born-again Christians. Out of 1.5 million, now it's down to 1.3. That's over 200,000. 200,000 women that have abortions are call themselves born-again Christians. Did y'all realize that? Y'all thought it was just a worldly problem, didn't you? You got God's people. People who claim to trust the blood doing this same exact thing. Okay? Number 2, there's a man by the name of John Enzer. He has a book on Focus on the Family that you can buy. What motivated him to do that book is he obviously pastored a large congregation, and when he did a poll of his congregation, 30% of the women in his congregation had an abortion. And it lit a fire under him to deal with it. With regard, 30% of the people of the women in his congregation had an abortion. Abortion is not just a problem in the United States. There's 46 million abortions worldwide every year. It's a problem. It's legal in 54 countries, but in those 54 countries, they have 61% of the world population. It's legal in 54 countries. In 97 countries, which only have 39% of the world populations, are illegal. So by far, this is a sin of the world. It's not a sin of the United States. I want you to realize that. Y'all might not have knew that. There's the far majority of the population of the world live in countries where abortion is legal by law. Still with me? 1 in 6 women in the United States will have an abortion. Give me some water, son, would you? 1 in 6 women in the United States will have an abortion. 1 in 6. For every 6 women, there will be one that has one. 46% of women will have an abortion by age. Will have at least one abortion by age 45. 43% of women will have at least one by age 45. In the year 2000, there was 1.3 million abortions. in the United States in the year 2000. Now, if you want to calculate how bad that is, if you go back to the Revolutionary War, then to the Civil War, and then all the wars of the United States all the way down to the Gulf Wars, there's more fatalities died from abortion in the year 2000 than in all the American wars put together. There's 151 abortions per hour. There's one every 24 seconds in our country. For every 1,000 live abortion or live births, there's 306 abortions. For every 1,000 live births, there's 306 abortions. Now, there's a disagreement on this next one, but you'll still get my point. Out of every 4 babies, 1 is aborted. Out of every 4. Now, the only disagreement is some say it's 1 in every 3. I chose the greater, 1 in every 4. Do y'all think that's bad enough? That's in the United States. Still with me? Since the 1973 Roe versus Wade decision, there's been 44 million abortions in the United States of America. 44 million. As a matter of fact, the lady, Roe is, of course, a name they took to protect the identity of the woman that did that. Her name is Norma McCorvey. She's been saved, and she's now a pro-life advocate. Think about it. The poster child for the law is no longer supporting that. I thought that was pretty good. Nearly half the abortions, the 1.3 million, nearly half of those are done by women who have already had one. So they have multiple ones over and over again. It's kind of used as a means of birth control by some people. They take the chance, and then, if they get pregnant, they can always get rid of it. Listen to this now. There's 1.1 million teenage girls become pregnant in our land every year. 1.1 million. 400,000 of those teenage girls will have an abortion. 400,000 out of the 1.1 million that become pregnant will have an abortion. Two-thirds of abortions are performed on white women. We think it's just a minority. It's the minorities, and it's white women that do it by far the most and choose to do so the most by far. I could give you a lot of other statistics, but is that enough to show you we got a big problem and we're losing this battle? Now, abortions have dropped because of there's been such an outcry against them, and there's been some people that will stand in the public forum against them. But I'm telling you, still at 1.3 million is still way too many. Do you not agree? So that's where our stands are. That's the stats on it. That should alarm you, because I'm going to tell you something. That's the shedding of innocent blood. And the Master holds a nation accountable for the shedding of innocent blood. Psalms 106 says a nation's land is polluted whenever it kills its children. It's a polluting of the land. And our land is polluted because of this particular sin. And it's justified by many, and many that justify it carry the label of Christian. Now, let's go ahead and move into the arguments. Are you with me? Arguments against it. I've got a whole page full of them that people have used against me. That's all right, I guess. But I'm going to give you the answers to them best I can. You'll find that if a person's already dead set in their position, you're not going to change them by arguing with them anyway. You're going to find that to be true. If they're already head set and dead against it, then you're not going to change them anyway. All you can do is pray and stand for the truth, which is all you need to do. Number one. Here's the number one argument. Not the number one argument, but really what I'm going to do, I'll give you the word and the stats, and I talk some about the government. I'm going to cover the diversion. And I think the arguments that is used against abortion or against pro-life is mainly a diversion. They're trying to divert your attention off the issues. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean by that as I go on with the passage. Number one, women have a right to choose what to do with their body. That's one of the number one arguments, that whenever you're standing for pro-life, and women have a right to choose what to do with their body. I agree with that to an extent. I agree you have a right to choose what you do with your body. But the problem is, when you have a child in there, that's two people. And you're accountable for that child. That's your child, and you're accountable for that child. It has its own, you know, the child has its own little genetic code. It's different than yours. Everyone has their own what? We even talk that way. We'll see a woman pregnant, she's eating, they'll say, oh, she's just eating for what? She's eating for two. Well, she really is, because that's a child in there. That's a what? Child, a babe, an infant. You see, what they're doing by saying that is they're trying to make it what issue? They're trying to make it a freedom issue. It's a diversion. They're diverting your mind off what is being done. It's not a freedom issue. It's a moral murder issue. That's what it is. And all abortion is legalized murder. And now we've made it a what? We've made it a question of freedom. I have a choice of what to do with my body. Yeah, you do. But that baby is another being. It's a child. And you have no more right and freedom to choose to kill that child in your womb as you got right and freedom to choose to kill the child in the cradle. All God's people said. No more right to do that. If you want to exercise your right, the best time for a woman to exercise her right to choose is before she commits fornication. That's the best, because I'm going to tell you something. Those who have an abortion, 75% of them is unmarried. 70%. That's the best time to choose. Is choose not to commit fornication. 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Let's turn to that passage. What? Verse 19. Know ye not that your body is the temple of the who? If you're saved, your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are what? You're not your own. What's it mean you're not your own? It means you belong to who? You're born again, you belong to God. For ye are bought with a price, verse 20. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are... Your body belongs to God too. I mean, for a Christian to say, I can choose what I want to do with my body, you're to glorify God with your body. You're to bring honor and praise to God with your body. And all they've done by that particular first argument is divert your mind and make it a freedom issue. When it's not a freedom issue, it's a murder issue. And people say, well, Jeff, it's legalized and there's no law against it. That's where you're wrong. There is a law against it. Exodus chapter 20 verse 13 says, thou shalt not murder. That's God's law. That's enough for us. I don't care what the law of the nation says. That's God's law. Thou shalt not murder, and it's covered under that particular command. And you're covered under that particular command, like it or not. So, women have a right to choose what to do with their body. They do. But the main argument with that is they don't have a right to choose to kill a child in the womb no more than they have a right to kill a child outside the womb. And all that is diverting your attention off the subject. And all that does is eases people's minds. You don't need to have an easy mind over this particular sin. This is a tragic, barbaric thing that's going on in our land. Number 2. Abortion is a private choice between a woman and her doctor. Well, what's in the womb again? Do we allow women to privately beat their children in the home? Is that just between the woman and her doctor, or between the woman? Is that just a private matter if a woman would take and beat her child in the home? One of the most barbaric things you ever heard of was that lady that's put her little children in the seat of that car and drove it into a lake. Was that just a private matter, oh? Was that just a private matter? I mean, she was upset, and after all, them children were hers and her business, and she had the right to do that. Isn't that just a private matter? If she chose to drive them and drown them in the lake, that's okay. We recognize that whenever people abuse children in the home, our government will seek to do something about it. And I'm telling you, that which is in the womb is just as much a child as those children that was strapped in those seats. It's again a what? A diversion of what is being done. And this land will be held accountable for laws that prohibit or that say it's okay to do such things. Number 3. A woman should not be forced to bring an unwanted child into the world. Isn't that wonderful? They're concerned over the children, so they're going to kill them. That's the goofiest That's the goofiest argument I ever heard. I'm just trying to save all the unwanted children, so I'm going to kill 1.3 million of them. Can I tell you something this morning? There is no unwanted children. There's a list of 2 million couples that wants to adopt children in our land, but you can't hardly adopt them. Many of them have to go outside our nation to do so. And they want the little babies with Down syndrome, and they want the little babies that's not well and handicapped just the same as the others. Waiting on them, wanting them. I just don't want to bring another unwanted child into the world. That has nothing to do with that. They're trying to picture themselves of being merciful. This is a merciful act. I'm going to kill my child so they won't be unwanted. Does that make any sense to you? Will you buy that? I don't buy that. I'd rather for being born and unwanted and find someone that wants them and give them a chance at life other than say, well, they're going to be unwanted, I'm going to kill them. Keep in mind, this whole issue comes down to the first message. What's here? I don't care what the argument, it always comes down to this. What's here and what you're doing. Number 4, don't make no matter who a leader is, abortion will not stop. Well, it don't make no difference who a leader is. Stealing won't stop, murder won't stop, and drugs won't stop either. But don't we still have to have laws that prohibit such things? We still have to have laws, and our leaders need to have laws that prohibit this particular practice also. You need to make a stand on this too. And we need to hold these fellows accountable that say they're pro-life and then turn around and vote every time against it. A lot of times people say they're pro-life just to get pro-life people's votes. We don't hold them accountable for that. We need to hold them accountable for that. They best vote what they say they're going to do. Or vote them out. Or vote them out. What about rape? Let's move on to the hard issues. This is the hard issues is rape. Woman's life is in danger. Incest. Things of that nature. So we're going to cover all of them in several different points here. What about rape? Deuteronomy chapter 24. You ready for another diversion? Most people would have you believe that the majority of that 1.3 million abortions every year is due to rape. Do you know how many percent? I'll have to write this down if I can find me a marker. Out of 100% of abortions, 0.6 of 1% is due to rape. It's not even a full percentage. They'd have you believe that that's why it's legalized, is to protect women that face rape. Less than 1% of abortions is for rape. As a matter of fact, to become pregnant through rape is very rare. It happens, but it is rare. So they want to make you believe, and a lot of these politicians want you to believe, well, the reason why I voted that way is I want to protect the women that's been raped. That's what they say. That's a diversion. That's all that is a diversion. It's less than a percentage. What about the other 99%? Why do they have them? What about the other 99%? Let me tell you why people have an abortion. It's not due to rape. That's not nowhere near the main reason. That's less than 1%. Here's the reasons. 25.5% of women decided to have abortion want to postpone childbearing. They become pregnant and they don't want to have a child now. They want to have one later, but because this child now is an inconvenience, they go and they abort the child. 25% do it for that reason. 21.3% women do it because they say they can't afford the baby. In other words, they're getting rid of their child because of what? 14% of women have relationships issues or their partner doesn't want a child. They become pregnant, usually it's their live-in, don't want to have a child, so they have an abortion. 14% is for that reason. 12% of them, the women, are too young, and their parents object to the pregnancy, so they had 12% of them have an abortion for that reason. 10.8% of women feel a child would disrupt their education or their career. How many? 10.8%. 7.9% of women want no more children, so they get an abortion. 3.3% of women have an abortion due to risk to fetal health, risk to the child. And then 2.8% of women have an abortion due to the risk of maternal health. What's that tell you? 98 to 97% of women are not having abortions because of rape, incest, or because their life's in danger. About 3%, that covers about 3%. What about the 97%? It's mainly because of inconvenience. That's why they do it. It has nothing to do with that. So Jim Dye, they tell you this is why we have this law, is to protect the women that are health in danger and to protect those that have been raped. And that's what eases their conscience when they lay their head down on a pillow at night. But 97% of that's not the reason at all. But that's what they'd have you believe, and people buy it by the millions. I don't buy it. Won't buy it. And you shouldn't either. We're the ones, for now, and this will offend some people, for now I would settle for a law that prohibits all abortions except for those 3 reasons. That would cut it out 97% of them. I would accept that right now. Now, a lot of pro-life people wouldn't. But you'd save over 1 million babies by that right off the bat. But you don't have nothing pertaining to that in the laws of our land. Nothing. What about rape? Very rare. 0, not even a full percentage. But what happens when it does happen? It does. People that are raped on occasions do get pregnant. What would you do? Do you abort the child? Do you kill the child? Deuteronomy chapter 24. Now, this is what I think the Bible teaches. Don't quarrel with me over this. I'm telling you. Don't quarrel. I won't do it. You take what I've given you this morning and you pray about it and look at it. Deuteronomy chapter 24 verse 16 says, the fathers shall not be put to death for the children. Neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. Now, I want you to let that settle real down real deep and think about it. Look at what it says. The children shall not be put to death for their what? For the fathers. In a rape case, whenever a woman becomes pregnant, the question is that still a child? Second question, did that child do anything? Is that child innocent? That's my question. Did it rape? It did not. To kill that which is in the womb then would be to kill the child for the sin of its father. At the very least, I think, the child should be had and put up for adoption, because there's 2 million waiting in line to adopt one. That's my view on it. You can like it or not, but that's the way I feel about it. And that's the way I believe I'd practice it in my life if faced with it. It'd be hard to do, would it not? But again, it comes down to what? What is in the womb? What is in the womb? Okay, so as far as that's concerned, you're putting to death a child for the sin of his father. I think the Bible answers that for you. And adoption would be the best. You say, well, that'll traumatize the woman. I don't think it would traumatize her as much as an abortion would. Abortions traumatize women. You know, one of the leading responses of women whenever they have an abortion after it's done is tears and I've killed my baby. That's something that sticks with them for the rest of their life. You ever dealt with someone that had one? I have. You ever talked to one? They were broke. You know one of the highest rates of suicide is women that have an abortion. You know the psychological stress that they're under? You ought to talk to them. They're broke over it. At least the people that I've dealt with over the years have been. If they could go back and undo, they would. They had to live with that, see. That trauma of that would be greater, in my opinion. Boy, it's quiet in here. I wish someone would say hello or something. The woman's life's at risk. I studied that all week long. And the percentage that women's life are at risk, again, is about 1%. So that means Jim died at 98% to 97%. It's for other reasons other than that. But you're made to believe that that's why they have them. And these, how can I say this easy? I ain't going to say it like that. These people try to justify their position and try to justify their votes in government based on, well, I'm just trying to protect women. That's what they say. They need to be concerned about those 1.3 million babies and concerned about trying to protect them. So, again, with regard to woman's life risk, 1%. In many of those cases where they say you can't have a baby, what the women choose to do is to carry it as long as they can and then have a cesarean birth. Many of them opt to do that, which is better. There is a case, maybe two cases, where it's not possible to do that. There's tubal pregnancies, where the woman is pregnant in the tubes. It's impossible to have a child in the tubes. Can I tell you something, though? You don't have to have an abortion law to get the okay to have a surgery to correct that. That's always been done. That's always been done. Doctors have always, loving, pro-life doctors have always went in and removed the child when it's in the tube. It's impossible for it to be born. You see what I'm saying? So you don't have to have an abortion law to have that practice okay. Doctors have always done that. See, it's a what? It's a diversion. What doctors try to do when a woman's life's at stake is they try to save both. The other issue is cancer of the uterus, where they can't. It's an impossible situation. So those are two. Again, surgery has always been done to correct that before the abortion laws was ever established. So you don't need the right to an abortion on demand in order to do those surgical procedures to protect life. They always have. Can everybody in the house see the diversion off the subject? We're just trying to protect. No, you're not trying to protect women. You're trying to get yourself elected by acting like you're protecting women and ignoring the 1.3 million children that are murdered every year that way. That's what you're doing. And it makes me so mad that I see cross-eyed whenever I watch people do it. I watch them do it all the time. And they justify it based on those hardship cases when they only make up, at the most, 5% of the abortions in this country. Next, we want to keep abortions out of the back alleys. So we need to provide a place clean and safe. And I hear that's used all the time. Politicians use that all the time. We don't want to take it back to the back alley days and the coat hanger days. That's what they say. So we're doing this to provide a place that's clean. You know they rob and kill. There's criminals that rob and kills in back alleys. But I don't want to provide a place that's clean and safe for them to rob and kill. Same kind of argument. It's just a goofy argument. When they made it legal, it has quadrupled since they've made it legal. These arguments don't hold water when you think of what... Look at here. Just think of this. If I hear one more person tell me I'm against abortion, but I'm for a woman's right to choose, I'm going to do 65 somersaults. That's like saying I'm against murder, but I'm for the right for you to blow someone's brains out. That's the goofiest thing. That's an absolute contradiction. And I want to tell you exactly what that is. I'm going to say it, that's some clown trying to pull votes from both sides. That's all that is. I'm against stealing, but I'm for your right to be able to steal if you want to. That's all that is. You see, all it is diversions. Getting your mind off the subject. Am I coming across mean this morning? I hope I'm not. I'm just telling you the truth. These arguments don't hold water. They don't hold water. And are a diversion off what is really being done. And you need to have enough gumption to stand for it. And hold people accountable for it. After all, it's the individual that does choose to do it. And as we spread the message enough, they will continue to go down. That's what we want. Oh, God's people say it. 2 Timothy chapter 3. That's all the arguments I'm going to cover with regard. And you see why I called it a diversion? Diversion number 1, because they've made it a freedom issue. Diversion number 2, because they made it a protection of women issue. That's 2 diversions. That's not what they're doing. And that's not the reason for them. Second Timothy chapter 3. Now, you can argue and argue and argue over this issue. I won't do it. I'll tell you my position. I'll give you my reasons for it. I'll cover the opponent's arguments with regard to it. But I'm going to tell you something this morning. You have to do what is right. Now listen to me. You have to do what is right between you and your God. That's what it comes down to. That's who you're responsible to. You need to seek this out and see what's right. I'm telling you, it's what's right because of what the Bible calls that which is in the womb. And I've covered all the issues that I know to cover. You say, well, Jeff, why are so many having them today? I'm going to tell you why so many is having them. 2 Timothy chapter 3 is why. Verse 1, this know that in the last days perilous times shall come. That means wicked times, scary times. We're living in perilous times. Do y'all agree with me? Who ever thought that we'd be seeing the things that we see today? Whoever thought that we'd ever see a time when 1 out of every 6 women that have an abortion would be someone that said they're born again? Whoever thought? Whoever thought back in 1973 when this was legalized it would lead to the abortion of 44 million babies? Who would ever thought? Who would ever thought that our tax dollars would go for such a practice, a barbaric practice as this? Who would ever thought? If you could take Abraham Lincoln or go all the way back to our forefathers and bring them up to today and let them see what was going on, who would have ever thought? Who would have ever thought that a big issue in our election is a homosexual marriage? Who would have ever thought that we would ever see in our life such a wicked and depraved thing? Who would have ever thought? Verse 2 says, For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous. What's covetous mean? Greedy of money. See, one of the reasons why people abort their children, they can't afford them. Boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents. But look at verse 3. Without what? Without natural affection. Does anybody in the house know what's the most natural affection there is? The love of a mother for their child. You don't get no more natural than that. Even animals love their children. I love their babies. Really, they do. It's a natural affection. But in the last days there will come a time when there'll be no natural affection. Man, when our boys was in the womb, David would talk to them, sing to them, pray, everything. And she loved them, boys, before they were ever born. She really did. She loved them. They hadn't even saw them yet. And she loved them. That's a natural affection. But in the last days, there'll be no natural. You'll see a going down of the natural affection. People will be more selfish, covetous, and they'll choose worldly things over even their own children. That's what you're seeing. Folks, I'm telling you, this abortion issue is a sign of the time. It's a sign of the times we live. It's just not a problem here in the United States. It's a worldwide problem. And it's continuing to... It's decreased some in our land because of the Right to Life organization, the churches that stand against it. But it is so tremendous, and so many of them's being done. We need to continue the fight. I'm going to ask you to participate in it. Participate by praying. Participate by sharing the message. Don't get in quarrels with people. What good does that do? It really don't. If someone's head set on what that's fine. All you can do is give the stats and give the arguments and move on. Hold people accountable for it too. Hold the people. I don't tell people who to vote for, but I'm going to do at least tell you to check them out. Check them out. Make sure. And if they say they're for and then turn around and don't do it, hold them accountable. We the what? We the people. We have a say. They work, supposedly, for us. Number 4, vote. Get involved. Veterans Sunday, many of our forefathers died for our privilege and freedom to vote. Exercise that right. Less than half America voted last election. That's a shame. I hope this helps you in some way. I hope it didn't make